Welcome to This Week in 2016 Presidential Polls, where we look past the horse race to the numbers that really matter. Here's the polling news that you need to know for the week ending June 26th. Among a bevy of polls that came out this week, a national survey from Fox News and a New Hampshire poll from Suffolk University both made headlines, mainly because they found Donald Trump in second place in the horse race. Now, technically that's true, but it's time for a reality check here. He's only getting 11% of the vote in both of those polls. That's not going to win you many delegates, let alone the nomination. So let's break this all down by looking at the New Hampshire poll results first. Jeb Bush and Donald Trump, who both threw their hats into the ring last week, are the top candidates in the poll. But in reality, the undecided vote has a significant lead over any of the named candidates. Even with a field this crowded, you're going to need more than Bush's current 14%, let alone Trump's 11% of the vote, if you expect to win the New Hampshire primary in February. So with each candidate consistently getting less than 20% in every poll, the question we need to ask is, who has the most room to pick up that support from those undecided voters, as well as from the other candidates as the field gets winnowed down? To answer that question, we need to look at some of the underlying fundamentals rather than the horse race. Looking at the so-called top 5 contenders in the Suffolk poll, we find that just 1/4 of Granite State Republicans have a negative view of Jeb Bush. This is actually better than the 1/3 of Republicans nationwide who have a negative view of him, and it suggests he has room to grow his support in this all-important contest. On the other hand, about half of the New Hampshire GOP base holds an unfavorable view of Donald Trump, and that's similar to his national numbers. Now, these folks are unlikely to change their mind about him, and that suggests he has a much lower ceiling for expanding his support, especially when compared to Scott Walker, Marco Rubio, and Ben Carson. Let's take a look at some of the other candidates in the field. Chris Christie's negatives are in the low 40s, both in New Hampshire and nationally. About 1/3 of New Hampshire Republicans have a negative view of Rand Paul. That's worse than he's doing nationally. Ted Cruz and Mike Huckabee also appeared to have less room to build support in this crucial first-in-the-nation primary than they do in other parts of the country, all based on their fundamental voting ratings. A national poll from NBC and the Wall Street Journal that was released this week asked the question even more directly. They found that 2/3 of Republican voters have already written off supporting Trump for the nomination. Fewer than 1 in 4 say the same about Bush, Carson, Walker, and Rubio. With 13 high-profile GOP contenders already in the race, and another 3 expected to get in the coming weeks, this is the most crowded presidential field we've ever seen. We'll see a few more bounces as this thing takes off, but we have to remember right now that the underlying fundamentals are going to tell us a lot more about who has staying power and who doesn't. In that light, we need to decide whether we want to make more of Donald Trump's second-place 11% showing in the Fox News poll, or the 64% of Republican voters in that very same poll who said that his candidacy was nothing more than a distracting sideshow. So those are the highlights and lowlights of This Week in 2016 presidential polls. Until next time, I'm Patrick Murray for the Monmouth University Polling Institute.